somebody in that can answer I don't know, maybe a legal question or a technical question of school policy?
Mr. Schultz is in a meeting. I can try to help you. What's it regarding?
Just basically the question is if Department of Human Services shows up to interview a kid in District 51, what's the protocol handled by the administrative staff at the school? Is it to contact parents? Is it to contact the liaison? Is it to...
Well, usually, as a rule, when DHS shows up, they have a court order, or they have something signed by a judge.
And what if they don't? So let's take it that way first.
We have to comply with DHS and police services. That's a policy that we have.
I understand that. I understand you have to do that. But what if, do you have to contact the parents and let them know?
We don't have to. There's a lot of times they're asked not to.
So here's my question. If I showed up with a DHS business card and asked to get a kid out of school, you would just comply with that, or are there...
No, you'd have to have credentials from DHS.
What if I had fake credentials? I'm just saying, is there something in place to call DHS directly and confirm they're supposed to be there, or do they arrange ahead of time? No,
they don't arrange ahead of time. They just show up. We do have a list of names of active DHS workers. There are exceptions to that rule where somebody's newly hired. If they have a badge from the Department of Human Services, we honor that. It isn't as easy as one would think to get a DHS credential.
Okay, so now if they perform an interview or interrogation at the school without a mediator or somebody for protecting the kid, is that in place by the school district, or is that something DHS would have to supply?
We have, once DHS or a sheriff or a police officer shows up at the building, technically the school is out of it. It is handled by the courts, and we honor.
No, I understand the courts, but I'm saying if they just came to interview a kid without a court order. So I know
if they work for those organizations, we have to honor. But we have to honor their request. They'll have a document from their agency requesting an interview, and we honor that.
Okay. So they'll request ahead of time, or they won't request ahead of time?
No, most of the time they don't. Most of the time they just walk in.
Okay. And so there's no District 51 policy that states the parent should be contacted, that somebody that's on the child side is making sure that they're protected during this interview and interrogation that would happen at the school? Is there no protection or nothing in place that a protocol that District 51 has in place for that?
Well, they work for the government. They work for the city. They work for the courts. It's a law, and I don't have that handy, but it's a law that we have to comply when they come in and request an interview with the student. We have to comply with that. That's a mandate.
Do you have that law?
I don't have that handy.
Okay, so you have to comply, and if you didn't comply, what would happen?
We could be we could be held in contempt of court.
Okay.
Even though they may not have a direct judge.
Yeah, does the kid have no rights in that situation? Is that, I guess, is what I'm getting at. So what's there to protect the child?
Well, the child, if they're there, it's because if it's law enforcement, they're investigating a situation. If it's DHS, they're investigating a report. And a lot of times it's on a parent that a neighbor or, who knows, has reported some incident that they're there to interview the child regarding that report.
Yeah, I'm just saying, but as a state law, you're as a parent, of that child. You're responsible for them until they turn 18 years old. And I understand there's potentially an issue with the parents, but wouldn't there some notification be required to the parents somehow?
I would have to look in policy and see if there's anything that specifies that.
Can I give you an email address, and if you find the policy, I'd like to actually get a copy of the policy regarding.
Sure, I can do that.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
I'm not saying there is one, but I will definitely look. Okay, what is your email address?
It's ONCART, ONCART,
okay,
at Bresnan, BRESNAN.net. And what was your name again, so I can expect that?
My name is Terry, and what is yours?
Kevin King.
Okay. Now, Evan,
Kevin,
Kevin, okay. Kevin, I'm not in the school buildings themselves. I have worked in a building before, and I know that when I worked in a building, if somebody came in from, like I said, any legal agency or a Department of Human Services agency, they came in, we verified their credentials. They usually had a paper that was signed by a judge, but that's not always the case. That they have to have that. But if they come in and request an interview with a child, we pull them out and they can interview the child. And normally it's because they have received a report of some incident with that child, and they are
whether
very
it's
sensitive.
a valid report or not valid, so that's the.
Well, that's what they're investigating, if it is or it isn't. There's a lot of times it's not valid. Most of the time it's not valid, and nothing is done at that point. They've talked to the child. They found that this was a false report, and then it's dropped. But there are situations where it is valid, and the kid has been abused or whatever has happened.
Sure.
And it isn't always by a parent. It could be by a sibling. It could be by an aunt or uncle. It could be at a function. We've had that happen. There is policies and regulations in place. That's okay.
I was just starting my truck up to warm up.
They're just looking out for the best interest of the kids, and it's really, I know it feels like a gotcha sometimes whenever they show up and interview a child, but it isn't always that case, and sometimes it has nothing to even do with you. But a lot of times we're finding in this day and age with split families that there are parents that try to file false reports on the other parent, and it's thoroughly investigated in a real humane manner with the child, depending on the age. The questions are keyed towards the age to help them find out information without upsetting the child as much as possible. And
that's the concern, right, Terry? That's the concern is you're going to interrogate a kid, and I know it's going to be, it's an interview, but you're going to interrogate a kid, potentially a young kid, with nobody there really to step them through, of people that don't really have the credentials really to be conducting something like that with a kid. So see that side of it, that concern as a parent?
I do see that side of it, but Kevin, I've been here 25 years and we have never had that happen. Never. We've never had somebody come in and falsify. We have had people try, I'll admit that. We've had people come in and try to say they were with a certain agency, and upon verification it was found to be false.
What about an agency from outside of Mesa County?
Well, if it's a law enforcement.
No, say if it's a DHS agency from Delta, Montrose, with no permission to be in Mesa County by Mesa County DHS, do you still allow a kid to be taken out of school in that situation?
As long as they're in the state of Colorado, they can come in and do it. It is a state law. It's not a local law. So they have crossing agencies is allowed as long as they have, especially out of town, the schools would call and verify that person.
So you get those calls often. Does it happen often here, or is it just the local DHS?
Locally is mainly what we deal with, local agencies, and it is we can't even ask them who reported because that's all confidential.
Sure.
They keep that internally, and they go back if they find that this person is falsifying a report. They will go back with law enforcement and say, you have filed a false report. if it happens again, we will press charges against you. That
well, but I think technically they have to report it by state statute. They have to file a false report with a law enforcement officer, not a case manager. So see how that leaves that open to abuse. That's why you get those.
I don't agree with that. I think that if it's proven that the report was falsely filed with a case manager, the person will be notified and told that they are aware of it was a false report. I don't know that anything will happen, but if it continued, they would work with law enforcement to press charges against that person.
Okay. Well,
law enforcement and DHS work very closely together.
Yeah, but they have different powers.
Together.
Right, but they have different powers and abilities and functions.
As in what? What are you talking about specifically?
So, like, if I file the false report to DHS, there's no legal criminal recourse filing a false report. If I file it with the law enforcement agency and the officer, because that's how the statute's written, then they can come back and press charges for a false report, because it was to a law enforcement official, not
on a first time. But if a person files a false report with DHS, they're going to be warned by DHS. If they file another false report, the DHS will work with law enforcement to press charges against that person for harassment of the person they're filing a report on.
Okay. Well, Mesa County Sheriff's Office said differently, I guess, when we talked to them. So I guess I'll get more clarification from DHS.
Well, and Kevin, I'll also know that myself, as well as any of those sheriffs, and they tell you what they've been told and trained. The ultimate bottom line about anything we have found in the district here is a judge. Whatever the judge can overthrow and overrule anything. They can, and so your best course of action if somebody is doing stuff like this to you is to see if you can't talk to a judge or a clerk, and see what they advise you. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to know the district policy, because if anybody can call a complaint on anybody and they can come take kids out of school, you can see the situation there could be abused, and I'm sure has been multiple times. But so just from a parent standpoint, if somebody called and complained on me and start going and interviewing my kids, that's troubling to me as a parent.
Well, it is troubling to anybody. You don't want anybody coming in and interviewing your kids, but unfortunately we don't have control over who does that if they're affiliated with the court system.
Right, I understand you don't have any control, but I was just hoping there was some sort of policy in place that at least looked out for the kids'
I will sure look.
First.
And maybe this afternoon before I can, I'll email you one way or the other if I find something, and it may be this afternoon though before I can get back to you, Kevin.
Okay, Terry, I appreciate your time.
That's no
Thank
problem.
You so much.
Good luck to you.
All right,
Bye.
thank you. Bye-bye.